She's a struggling mother, fighting every day to give her little girl hope, with nothing but her voice to keep them alive. But when a stranger drops a card in her jar, everything changes. He isn't just any man, he's a music producer who vanished years ago. And just when new hope begins to rise, secrets, betrayals, and dangerous choices threaten to tear them apart. Will her voice save them, or destroy the only family they've ever known? Narrator: urgent, provocative. When a single song can change a life? Who will she trust, and what will it cost? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The autumn wind whispered through the streets of Cedar Grove, rustling fallen leaves across the cracked sidewalk where Emily Carter carefully unfolded her weathered chair. Her fingers, red from the cold, gripped the familiar wooden guitar as she settled into position on the busy corner of Main and Oak. "Here, sweetie?" Emily asked, glancing at her daughter Lily, who nodded enthusiastically while clutching her worn teddy bear. "This is the best spot, Mommy. More people can hear you here." Lily's eyes sparkled with unwavering faith, a trait that often brought tears to Emily's eyes. Emily adjusted her thin jacket, wishing she had remembered to bring Lily's extra sweater. The evening chill was settling in earlier these days. She positioned her guitar, its scratched surface telling stories of countless performances on street corners, just like this one. "Remember what we talked about?" Emily whispered to Lily, who was arranging small stones around their tip jar. "A ritual," she insisted, "brought good luck." "Stay close, and don't talk to strangers," Lily recited, then added with a smile. "But it's okay to smile at nice people who give tips." Emily's heart clenched. No mother ever imagined teaching their child the delicate balance between being grateful for strangers' kindness and staying safe from their dangers. But here they were, the last rays of sunlight painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, while the steady stream of people hurried past, most avoiding eye contact. Taking a deep breath, Emily began to strum her guitar. The familiar chords of "His Eye is on the Sparrow" filled the air, her voice carrying clear and strong despite her exhaustion from the morning shift at the diner. "Why should I feel discouraged?" she sang, her voice rich with emotion. "Why should the shadows come?" A few heads turned. An elderly woman slowed her pace, fishing in her purse before dropping $1 in the jar. Lily beamed at her, just as Emily had taught her. As Emily moved through her repertoire of gospel songs, Lily's small voice joined in on the choruses she knew by heart. Together, their voices created a harmony that seemed to push back against the growing darkness and the cold wind that occasional passers-by brought with their hurried steps. "How about This Little Light of Mine?" Lily suggested between songs, her face lighting up. It was her favorite, reminding her of Sunday school, before they couldn't afford the gas to drive to church anymore. Emily nodded, managing a smile despite the ache in her fingers. As they sang together, a young couple stopped to listen, the woman leaning into her partner's embrace. They dropped a $5 bill in the jar, and Lily's eyes widened at their generosity. "God bless you," Emily called after them, her voice catching slightly. That $5 meant they could afford bread and milk tomorrow. The street lamps flickered to life as Emily continued playing. She wove through hymns and gospel songs, each one carrying memories of better days, of singing in church with John, of his proud smile when she hit the high notes, of his strong hands teaching Lily to clap along with the rhythm. "Mommy, look!" Lily whispered excitedly, pointing at their tip jar. A small collection of ones and fives had accumulated. Not enough for rent, but maybe enough for groceries this week. Emily's fingers found the opening notes to Amazing Grace, the song that always seemed to draw the most attention. As her voice rose with the familiar words, she noticed a man slow his pace several yards away. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound," she sang, her voice carrying the weight of every struggle and every small victory of the past 2 years. "That saved a wretch like me." The stranger stopped completely now, standing still among the moving crowd. He wore a dark jacket and carried himself with a quiet confidence that made him stand out from the usual hurried pedestrians. "I once was lost, but now am found," Emily continued, trying not to focus on his unwavering attention. "Was blind, but now I see." Lily, noticing the man's interest, straightened her posture and sang a little louder, her clear child's voice joining her mother's on the familiar verses. The stranger's expression remained unreadable as he listened, but he made no move to leave. Emily's voice soared through the verses, each word carrying years of faith tested by hardship. The wind picked up, causing Lily to huddle closer to her mother's legs, but still they sang. The stranger remained, his stance suggesting he was lost in thought or memory. Through many dangers, toils, and snares, Emily's voice trembled slightly with emotion. "I have already come." A young mother hurried past with a toddler, dropping some change in the jar. The clinking sound briefly drew Emily's attention. But when she looked up again, the mysterious stranger was still there, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that made her slightly uncomfortable. "'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far," she continued, her fingers finding the chords automatically after countless performances. "And grace will lead me home." Lily's small hand found its way into her mother's hair, playing with the ends, as she often did when she was tired. Emily knew they should head home soon. They both had early mornings ahead, but something about the stranger's presence kept her playing. The final verse approached, and Emily put every ounce of her remaining energy into it. Her voice rose clear and strong into the darkening sky, carrying not just the melody, but the weight of her struggles, her fears, and her unwavering faith despite it all. The stranger took a step closer, his expression still unreadable in the growing darkness. Emily forced herself to focus on the song, on Lily's warmth against her leg, on the familiar feel of the guitar strings beneath her fingers. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was happening, that this moment somehow mattered more than the hundreds of other street corner performances that had come before. As the last notes of Amazing Grace faded into the evening air, the stranger remained motionless, his gaze fixed on Emily with an intensity that made her want to gather Lily close and hurry home. Yet something in his stance wasn't threatening. It was almost as if he was seeing something far beyond the tired single mother on a street corner with her second-hand guitar and her tip jar of desperation. The last notes of Amazing Grace faded into the crisp evening air as Emily's voice softly trailed off. Her eyes remained closed for a moment, holding on to the peace that always washed over her when she sang that hymn. It had been John's favorite, and somehow singing it made her feel closer to him, even after all these years. A gentle tug at her sleeve brought her back to reality. "Mommy, look," Lily whispered, pointing at the stranger who had been listening. Emily's eyes landed on a tall man in his early 40s, wearing a worn leather jacket and faded jeans. His salt and pepper hair was slightly disheveled, and there was something in his eyes, a depth of understanding that made her slightly uncomfortable. The man approached their makeshift performance space with measured steps. Emily instinctively pulled Lily closer, her mother's protective instincts kicking in, but the stranger's gentle smile put her somewhat at ease. "Your voice," he said softly, reaching into his wallet. "It reminds me of the old gospel singers I used to work with." Pure, unfiltered emotion. He pulled out a crisp $50 bill, and Emily's eyes widened. That was more than she usually made in 2 days of street singing. "Sir, that's too much," she protested, but he was already dropping it into her tip jar. The green bill settled atop the scattered ones, and loose change like a leaf landing on a pond. "No," he said, shaking his head. "If anything, it's not enough." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. The white rectangle caught the glow of the street lamp as he held it out to her. "You have a gift the world needs to hear." Emily accepted the card automatically, more out of politeness than interest. She'd heard similar lines before, usually from people who thought they could take advantage of a struggling single mom. The card's texture was thick and expensive between her fingers, but she didn't look at it, keeping her eyes on the stranger instead. Before she could respond, he melted back into the stream of evening commuters, his figure disappearing among the bodies hurrying home from work. The whole interaction had lasted less than a minute, but it left Emily feeling unsettled. Lily pressed against her side, her small face thoughtful. "He liked your singing, Mommy. Did you see how he closed his eyes when you hit the high note?" Emily smiled, tucking a strand of hair behind her daughter's ear. "You notice everything, don't you, sweetheart?" She began packing up their things, carefully placing her guitar in its case. The evening crowd was thinning, and the temperature was dropping. Time to head home. Can we get hot chocolate? Lily asked hopefully, helping to fold the chair. Since we got extra money today? Emily glanced at the tip jar, where the $50 bill peeked out like a secret. You know what? I think we can. The words brought a bright smile to Lily's face, and Emily felt a warm glow in her chest. It was worth standing in the cold for hours just to see that smile. As they gathered their belongings, Emily's fingers brushed against the business card in her pocket. She pulled it out, meaning to toss it in the nearest trash can, but Lily spoke up again. Mommy, he was different. Her daughter's voice was serious, carrying that peculiar wisdom that sometimes emerged from her young soul. Emily paused, studying her daughter's earnest face. Different how, sweetie? He listened with his heart. Lily said simply, hugging her teddy bear closer. Like when Pastor Mike listens to the choir, and his eyes were sad but kind. Like yours sometimes. Emily's throat tightened at her daughter's words. Leave it to Lily to see straight through to the heart of things. She looked down at the business card, still clutched in her hand, then slipped it back into her pocket. She'd throw it away later. Come on, love, she said, taking Lily's small hand in hers. Let's go get that hot chocolate before the cafe closes. They walked down the darkening street, their shadows stretching long behind them in the glow of street lamps. Emily hummed softly, a habit she'd developed to keep Lily's spirits up during their daily walks. The weight of the business card seemed to press against her hip through the thin fabric of her jacket pocket, but she pushed the thought away. She'd learned the hard way not to trust in empty promises, no matter how well-intentioned they might seem. Still, as they walked, Lily's words echoed in her mind. He was different. Her daughter's instincts about people were usually spot on, but Emily couldn't afford to take chances. Not with Lily's future at stake. They'd survived this long on their own, and they would keep surviving, one street corner song at a time. The warm aroma of coffee and chocolate beckoned them as they approached their favorite cafe. Emily squeezed Lily's hand, drawing strength from her daughter's unwavering trust and love. Tomorrow would be another day of singing on the corner, another day of hoping and praying for enough tips to keep going. But for now, they had this moment, this small luxury of hot chocolate and the comfort of being together. Sunlight filtered through the threadbare curtains of Emily and Lily's small apartment kitchen. The morning chill crept through the poorly insulated walls, making Emily pull her worn cardigan tighter around her shoulders. She stirred a pot of instant oatmeal on their second-hand stove, watching the steam rise in lazy swirls. Would you like cinnamon in yours, sweetie? Emily called out, reaching for their dwindling supply of spices. Yes, please. Lily sat at their small folding table, her legs swinging beneath her chair. Her old laptop, a gift from a church charity drive, hummed quietly in front of her. Mommy, where's that card from yesterday? Emily spooned oatmeal into 2 chipped bowls. It's in my coat pocket, but finish your breakfast first. Lily stirred her oatmeal around, making patterns with her spoon. Can I look at it now, please? Her big brown eyes sparkled with curiosity. Oh, all right. Emily couldn't help but smile at her daughter's enthusiasm. She walked to the coat rack by their door and pulled out the slightly bent business card. But be careful with it. Lily handled the card like it was made of gold, squinting at the elegant black lettering. Daniel Hayes, she sounded out carefully. Her small fingers flew to the laptop keyboard, pecking out each letter with determination. Emily sat down with her own bowl, blowing on a spoonful of oatmeal. Honey, it's probably just someone being kind. You know how people sometimes... She stopped mid-sentence when she noticed Lily's eyes growing wide. Mommy, look! Lily turned the laptop around. The screen showed multiple news articles, music industry websites, and photographs. He made lots of famous songs. Emily leaned forward, her breakfast forgotten. The first article headline read, Grammy-winning producer Daniel Hayes, the man behind the music. Below it was a younger version of the man from yesterday, accepting an award on stage, his smile, bright and confident. Says here he worked with, oh my goodness. Emily's hand trembled as she scrolled through the impressive list of artists. Names she'd grown up listening to, voices that had shaped her own singing style. Lily bounced in her seat. Keep reading, Mommy, there's more. Another headline caught Emily's eye. Industry legend Daniel Hayes disappears from spotlight. The article detailed how he had suddenly stepped away from the music industry 5 years ago, following a controversial dispute with his business partner. Emily's mind flashed back to yesterday, the worn jacket, the quiet demeanor, the way he had listened so intently to her singing. Nothing about him had suggested wealth or fame. "Look at all these pictures of him." Lily clicked through a gallery. "He looks different now, but it's definitely him. Remember his gray hair?" Emily reached for the business card again, studying it with new eyes. The simple white card bore only his name and a phone number, no fancy titles or company logos. She thought of the $50 bill he'd left in her tip jar, and his words echoed in her mind. "You have a gift the world needs to hear." "Did you see this one?" Lily pointed excitedly at another photo. "He's with Taylor Swift." Emily's hand started shaking harder, making the card tremble. The reality of who had been standing on their street corner yesterday began to sink in. This wasn't just some random kind stranger. This was someone who had shaped the modern music industry. Someone who had worked with legendary artists. Someone who— "Mommy, he's famous!" Lily's excited squeal filled their tiny kitchen as Emily stared at the screen in shock, the card shaking in her hand. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the apartment's dingy windows. Emily sat at their small kitchen table, bills spread before her like a depressing card game she couldn't win. Each envelope bore red stamps: past due, final notice. Her fingers trembled as she counted their meager savings from street performances. Not nearly enough. Lily lay on her stomach in the living room, surrounded by her colored pencils and paper, humming the tune of Amazing Grace while drawing what looked like angels with rainbow wings. The sound of her daughter's innocent happiness made Emily's heart ache. A sharp knock rattled their apartment door. Emily's stomach clenched. She knew that aggressive pattern. 3 quick raps, followed by 2 heavy ones. Mr. Peterson, their landlord. "Coming," Emily called out, quickly gathering the bills and shoving them into a drawer. "Lily, honey, why don't you go color in your room for a bit?" Lily looked up, her big brown eyes questioning, but she nodded and gathered her art supplies. She'd learned early to read her mother's worried tones. Emily smoothed her shirt and opened the door to find Mr. Peterson's stocky frame filling the doorway. His usual scowl seemed deeper today, his thin gray hair disheveled by the wind picking up outside. "Mrs. Carter," he said, not waiting for an invitation before stepping into their small living room. "This can't go on." "Mr. Peterson, I know I'm behind, but—" "2 months behind," he cut in, pulling out a worn leather notepad. "That's $600, Mrs. Carter. I've been patient because of your situation, but I've got bills to pay too." Emily wrapped her arms around herself, feeling the thin fabric of her cardigan. "I'm getting more hours at the diner next week, and my street performances have been bringing in more—" "Street performances?" Mr. Peterson's eyebrows shot up. "That's your plan? Singing on corners like some?" He stopped himself, glancing toward Lily's room. "Look, I need real solutions here. Please," Emily's voice cracked. "Just give me until the end of the month. I promise I'll have at least half." "That's what you said last month," he sighed, running a hand over his face. "I'm not the bad guy here, but I can't run a charity. You have until Friday to come up with the money, or I'll have to start the eviction process." The word eviction hit Emily like a physical blow. "Friday? But that's only 3 days away." "My hands are tied, Mrs. Carter. Either pay up or start packing." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I am sorry, but business is business." Emily followed him to the door, her mind racing. "What if I could give you something as collateral? I have my wedding ring." "Don't." Mr. Peterson held up his hand. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Friday, Mrs. Carter. That's final." The door closed behind him with a hollow thud. Emily stood there, staring at the peeling paint, hearing the distant rumble of thunder. Her legs felt weak, and she slowly slid down against the wall until she sat on the floor. "Mommy?" Lily's small voice came from her bedroom doorway. She patted over in her sock feet, her favorite stuffed rabbit dragging behind her. Emily opened her arms, and Lily crawled into them, settling into her mother's lap. They sat there together, Emily breathing in the sweet scent of her daughter's strawberry shampoo, a small luxury she always made sure to afford. "Are we in trouble?" Lily whispered, clutching her rabbit. Emily swallowed hard, trying to keep her voice steady. "We're going to be okay, baby. God has a plan for us. Remember what we always say? He works in mysterious ways," Lily recited, snuggling closer. Outside, rain began to fall, pattering against their window in a steady rhythm. Emily held her daughter tighter, feeling the weight of their uncertain future, pressing down like the dark clouds above. The business card from Daniel Hayes seemed to burn in her pocket where she'd stashed it that morning, but pride and fear kept her from reaching for it. The rain grew heavier, drumming against the roof. Mother and daughter sat together on the floor, their shadows stretching long across the worn carpet as the afternoon light faded. Emily rocked gently, humming a hymn her own mother used to sing during storms, while tears she wouldn't let Lily see slid silently down her cheeks. The streetlights flickered to life as Emily trudged back to her familiar corner. Her guitar case felt heavier than usual, matching the weight in her heart. The evening air had turned crisp, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and approaching winter. She couldn't stop thinking about the landlord's face, his stern warning still ringing in her ears. Lily skipped alongside her, clutching her worn teddy bear. "Can I put out the tip jar tonight, Mommy?" she asked, her voice bright despite everything. "Of course, sweetheart." Emily managed to smile, though her throat felt raw from crying. She watched as Lily carefully placed their mason jar on the sidewalk, arranging it just so. As Emily unfolded her chair, she noticed him. Daniel Hayes stood in the shadows of the coffee shop entrance, hands in his pockets, watching with that same unreadable expression from yesterday. Her heart skipped. Now knowing who he was made his presence both thrilling and terrifying. She settled into her chair, trying to ignore him as she tuned her guitar. The strings were old, some showing wear, but they still held their pitch. Lily sat cross-legged beside her, humming softly. "Amazing Grace," Emily began, her voice cracking slightly. She cleared her throat and started again, pushing through the hoarseness. How sweet the sound! The familiar hymn drew a small crowd. Office workers paused on their way home, teenagers stopped their chatter, and even a hurried mother with shopping bags slowed her pace. Emily kept her eyes closed, letting the music wash away her fears, if only for a moment. When she opened them, Daniel had moved closer. He stood at the edge of the gathering, his face softened by something that looked like recognition. Emily's voice grew stronger, finding its foundation in the sacred words. Between songs, people dropped bills and coins into Lily's jar. The little girl beamed at each contributor, offering cheerful thank yous that made even the most serious faces crack a smile. "Do you know 'In the Garden'?" an elderly woman requested, pressing a $5 bill into Lily's hand. Emily nodded, adjusting her guitar strap. This had been her husband's favorite, the song they'd danced to at their wedding. Her fingers found the chords automatically, muscle memory carrying her through the introduction. As she sang about walking and talking with Jesus in the garden, she noticed Daniel step forward, his expression intense. The words seemed to touch something deep within him. Emily's voice soared on the chorus, pure and clear despite her earlier tears. A cool breeze rustled through the trees, carrying fallen leaves in lazy spirals. The street lamps cast gentle halos in the growing dusk. More people gathered, forming a respectful semicircle around Emily's chair. Some closed their eyes, others swayed slightly, all caught in the spell of her voice. When the song ended, the silence held for a beautiful moment before applause broke out. Emily ducked her head, uncomfortable with direct praise. Lily bounced up and down, clapping loudest of all. "Another one, Mommy," she urged, her eyes shining. Emily started, "How great thou art," her fingers moving surely across the strings. But halfway through the first verse, Lily stood up and walked straight to Daniel, who still stood apart from the crowd. Emily's heart jumped to her throat, but she forced herself to keep playing, to keep singing, even as she watched her daughter approach the stranger she'd spent all day reading about on the internet. Lily tugged at Daniel's jacket sleeve. He knelt down to her level, his face gentle as she whispered something Emily couldn't hear. The crowd watched the interaction with curious smiles, probably assuming they knew each other. Emily's voice wavered slightly as she tried to focus on the lyrics, not on her daughter's conversation with the famous producer. Daniel nodded seriously at whatever Lily was saying, his expression warm and attentive. Then Lily's clear voice rang out, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Mommy says you're my daddy." The guitar chord Emily was playing turned into a discordant twang. Several people gasped. Others exchanged shocked glances. The elderly woman who'd requested "In the Garden" pressed a hand to her chest. Daniel remained frozen in his crouched position, his eyes wide with surprise. The warmth in his face had been replaced by stunned confusion. Emily's cheeks burned with humiliation. Her fingers trembled on the guitar strings as the silence stretched unbearably. She wanted to disappear, to sink into the concrete beneath her feet, to wake up and find this was all a terrible dream. The crowd stood awkwardly, witnessing this intensely private moment. Emily couldn't move, couldn't speak, couldn't even look at Daniel's face. She stared at her guitar, wishing she could take back every moment that had led to this mortifying misunderstanding. Emily's face burned with embarrassment as she quickly pulled Lily close to her side. The crowd that had gathered during her singing was now dispersing, but their whispers and sideways glances felt like tiny needles pricking her skin. "I'm so sorry," Emily stammered, her hands trembling as she smoothed Lily's windblown hair. "She doesn't. I never said." She took a deep breath, trying to steady her voice. "What she means is that we've been praying for help, and you've been kind to us." Daniel stood perfectly still, his expression shifting from shock to something softer, more understanding. The street corner suddenly felt too small, too exposed. A car honked in the distance, making Emily jump. "It's okay," Daniel said quietly, his voice gentle. He adjusted his worn leather jacket and slowly crouched down to meet Lily's eyes. His movements were careful, like someone approaching a nervous rabbit. Lily clutched her teddy bear tighter, but didn't shy away. Her big brown eyes studied Daniel's face with that pure, innocent curiosity that only children possess. "Hey there, Lily," Daniel said softly. "I'm no daddy, but I can be your friend." He smiled, and the corners of his eyes crinkled warmly. "Would that be okay?" Lily nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. "You liked Mommy's singing," she said matter-of-factly. "Nobody else stops to listen like you do." Emily's throat tightened. It was true. Daniel had listened differently than the hurrying crowds, as if he could hear something others missed. "Your mommy has a special gift," Daniel replied, still focused on Lily. "Sometimes people are too busy to notice special things." A gust of wind whipped down the street, scattering fallen leaves and making Emily shiver in her thin jacket. She noticed Lily trembling too, despite her brave face. Daniel stood up, brushing off his knees. "Listen," he said, addressing Emily now. "It's getting cold out here. There's a diner around the corner, Pat's Place. Would you both join me for dinner?" Emily's immediate instinct was to refuse. Pride and caution warred inside her. Pride that wouldn't let her accept charity, and caution about trusting a stranger, even a seemingly kind one. But Lily's stomach chose that moment to growl audibly. "Please, Mommy?" Lily whispered, tugging at Emily's sleeve. "I like Mr. Daniel." Emily looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then at Daniel. In the gathering dusk, his expression was open, patient. There was no pity there, just genuine concern. "I know it's a lot to ask," Daniel said, reading her hesitation. "But it's just dinner, in a public place, no strings attached." He gestured toward the tip jar at their feet. "Consider it an advance on your next performance." Emily couldn't help but laugh a little at that, though it came out shaky. "An advance? Is that how music producers usually do business?" "I'm not usual anything right now," Daniel replied with a slight shrug. "Just a guy who knows talent when he hears it, offering to buy a burger for a tired singer and her daughter." Lily was practically bouncing now, her earlier embarrassment forgotten. "Can we, Mommy? My tummy's making growly bear noises." Emily looked at her daughter's worn shoes, the fraying hem of her jacket. The thought of their empty apartment refrigerator made her chest ache. Sometimes pride had to bow to practicality. "Okay," she said finally, bending to pack up her guitar. "But just dinner," Daniel nodded, keeping a respectful distance as she gathered her things. "Just dinner," he agreed. Lily beamed, skipping between them as they started walking. The street lamps cast long shadows on the sidewalk, and the evening air smelled of approaching rain. "Mr. Daniel," Lily chirped as they walked, "do you like grilled cheese? They make the best grilled cheese at Pat's. The cheese gets all stretchy like rubber bands, but tasty rubber bands, not real ones." Daniel chuckled, a warm, genuine sound that seemed to surprise even him. "I haven't had a good grilled cheese in ages. Sounds perfect." Emily watched their interaction, her heart doing a complicated dance of worry and hope. This wasn't how she'd planned for her evening to go, but then again, nothing in her life had gone according to plan lately. As they approached the diner's neon-lit windows, Emily found herself offering up a silent prayer, not for a miracle this time, just for the wisdom to know if this unexpected kindness was the answer she'd been seeking all along. The bell above the diner's door chimed as Daniel held it open for them, the warm air inside carrying the comforting smell of coffee and grilled onions. Emily hesitated for just a moment before stepping through, Lily's small hand warm in hers, leading her forward into the unknown. The fluorescent lights of the apartment building's hallway buzzed overhead as Emily and Lily approached their door, their stomachs full from the diner meal Daniel had insisted on buying them. Lily skipped ahead, humming the tune to Amazing Grace, her small shoes making soft padding sounds against the worn carpet. Emily's steps slowed as she spotted something white taped to their door. Her heart sank as she recognized the official letterhead, even from a distance. The paper fluttered slightly in the draft from the building's ancient heating system, like a flag of surrender. "What's that, Mommy?" Lily asked, pointing at the notice. Emily's throat tightened. "Just a note, sweetie." She quickly pulled the paper down, but her hands shook as she read the words she'd been dreading. "Notice of eviction, 72 hours to vacate." The hallway seemed to spin around her. 3 days. They had 3 days to leave their home. The diner's chicken soup and mashed potatoes that had tasted so comforting minutes ago now felt heavy in her stomach. "Can we read my bedtime story now?" Lily asked, already fishing her key from the little unicorn purse she carried everywhere. Emily forced a smile, tucking the notice into her jacket pocket. "Of course, baby. Let's get you ready for bed." She unlocked the door with trembling fingers, guiding Lily inside their small apartment. The space that had often felt too cramped now seemed precious. Emily's eyes swept over their few possessions: the second-hand couch where they cuddled for movie nights, the small table where Lily did her homework, the corner where Emily's guitar stood like a faithful friend. "Go brush your teeth, sweetheart," Emily said, keeping her voice steady. While Lily was in the bathroom, Emily sank onto the couch and pulled out the eviction notice again. The words hadn't changed. 2 months of missed rent had caught up with them, despite all her efforts to stretch every dollar. "All clean." Lily emerged from the bathroom in her favorite purple pajamas, the ones with little stars that were getting too short at the ankles. "Can we read Goodnight Moon?" Emily patted the couch beside her. "Come here first, baby. Mommy needs to talk to you about something." Lily climbed up, nestling against Emily's side like she always did. The familiar weight of her daughter's trust made Emily's heart ache. "Remember how we talked about adventures?" Emily began, stroking Lily's dark curls. Lily nodded eagerly. "Like when we went camping last summer?" "Sort of like that." Emily swallowed hard. "We're going to have a different kind of adventure for a little while. We need to take a little trip in our car." "Like a vacation?" Lily's eyes brightened. Emily's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. "It might feel like that sometimes. We'll need to pack some special things. Your favorite books, your blanket, some clothes." "Can I bring Mr. Whiskers?" Lily asked, clutching her worn teddy bear closer. "Of course you can." Emily pulled her daughter closer, breathing in the sweet smell of her strawberry shampoo. "Mr. Whiskers is family." They spent the next hour packing what they could into 2 small suitcases. Emily focused on necessities: clothes, toiletries, Lily's school supplies. She carefully packed her guitar in its case, along with the small photo album containing pictures of Lily's father. Everything else would have to stay behind. When Lily finally fell asleep in her bed for what Emily knew would be the last time, the reality of their situation crashed over her. She moved through the apartment like a ghost, gathering the last essential items they'd need. Her hands lingered on familiar surfaces: the kitchen counter where she'd taught Lily to make pancakes, the windowsill where they'd watched countless sunsets together. At midnight, Emily gently woke Lily. "Time for our adventure, sweetheart," she whispered, wrapping her daughter in her warm blanket. Lily mumbled sleepily as Emily carried her down to their old Corolla, settling her in the back seat. The night was clear and cold, stars twinkling overhead with indifferent beauty. Emily drove carefully through the quiet streets, her headlights cutting through the darkness until she found what she was looking for: a well-lit parking lot behind a 24-hour grocery store, partially hidden from the main road by a row of pine trees. She parked under a bright security light, making sure all the doors were locked. In the back seat, Lily had already drifted back to sleep, curled up with Mr. Whiskers under her blanket. Emily reached back to stroke her daughter's hair, and only then, in the silence of their first homeless night, did she allow her tears to fall. They slid down her cheeks silently as she watched her daughter sleep, looking so peaceful despite their circumstances. Emily's fingers continued their gentle movement through Lily's soft curls, a gesture that had always soothed them both. Each tear carried the weight of her failure to provide a home, her fear for their future, and the crushing responsibility of keeping her daughter safe and happy in a world that suddenly felt so cold. The security light cast strange shadows through the car windows, and somewhere in the distance a siren wailed. Emily wiped her eyes with her free hand, but kept the other one connected to Lily, that physical touch serving as both comfort and promise. No matter what happened, they would face it together. The autumn sun crept over the buildings, casting long shadows across the street corner where Emily had sung so many times before. Her fingers felt stiff from the cold night spent in the car, and her back ached from trying to sleep in the driver's seat. But she had to be here. This corner was their only source of income now. Lily sat on their folded blanket nearby, her math workbook open on her lap. She'd insisted on doing her homework despite everything, showing a strength that made Emily's heart both swell with pride and ache with worry. "Remember to check your multiplication, sweetie," Emily said, adjusting the worn guitar strap over her shoulder. Her voice was scratchy from the cold night air, but she cleared her throat and began to sing anyway. The morning commuters hurried past, some dropping coins in her jar, others averting their eyes. After her third song, Emily noticed Daniel approaching from across the street. He carried 2 paper cups, steam rising from them in the crisp morning air. Her first instinct was to pack up and leave. Pride and embarrassment from last night's revelation about their living situation made her want to run. But Lily's face lit up at the sight of him, and Emily couldn't bring herself to disappoint her daughter again. "Good morning," Daniel said, his voice gentle. He offered Emily one of the cups. "I thought you might need this." The coffee's warmth seeped through the paper cup into her cold hands. "Thank you," she managed, though the words felt thick in her throat. "Hi, Mr. Daniel," Lily chirped, setting aside her workbook. "Look, I did all my multiplication tables." Daniel crouched down beside her, examining the neat rows of numbers with genuine interest. "That's impressive work, Lily. You must be very smart." Emily watched their interaction, noting how careful Daniel was with his words and actions. He didn't make grand promises or try to play hero. Instead, he just listened. It reminded her of how her late husband used to be with Lily: present, attentive, real. "Emily," Daniel said, straightening up but keeping his voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. "I know things are rough right now. I have a small recording studio not far from here. Nothing fancy, but it's professional enough. I still have connections with some good people in the industry." Emily took a sip of coffee to hide her uncertainty. "Mr. Hayes." "Daniel," he corrected gently. "Daniel," she amended. "I appreciate the coffee and your kindness, but I can't accept charity. I won't be another person's good deed for the day." His eyes softened with understanding. "This isn't charity. I wouldn't offer if I didn't believe in your talent. That voice of yours, it's rare, raw and honest. People need to hear it." Emily glanced at Lily, who had returned to her homework, but was clearly trying to listen to their conversation. "I've heard promises before," she said quietly, "from people who said they wanted to help but disappeared when things got difficult." Daniel nodded, running a hand through his graying hair. "I know about disappointment. I walked away from the music industry years ago because someone I trusted betrayed me. Took credit for my work, stole my profits." He paused, looking out at the passing traffic. "But your voice, it reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place." A young woman dropped a $5 bill in Emily's tip jar, smiling warmly. Emily nodded her thanks, then turned back to Daniel. "Even if I wanted to, I can't afford studio time." "I own the studio," Daniel said. "It's small, but it's mine. No charge, just an opportunity to record a proper demo. See where it leads." Emily's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. The practical part of her mind screamed that this was too good to be true, that hope was dangerous. But another part, the part that still remembered how it felt to dream, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was an answer to prayer. Lily looked up from her workbook. "Mommy, can we, please? I love hearing you sing in a real place." Emily's heart clenched at her daughter's enthusiasm. She knew that look in Lily's eyes, hope, pure and fragile as glass. The same hope she'd had when she'd called Daniel Daddy the night before. "I need to be clear about something," Emily said, meeting Daniel's gaze directly. "Whatever this is, whether it works out or not, Lily's feelings can't be collateral damage. She's been through enough." Daniel held her gaze steadily. "I understand. And I promise you both, I won't walk away. Whatever happens with the music, I'll be straight with you. No false promises." Emily looked at her daughter, then back at Daniel. She thought about the eviction notice, about sleeping in the car, about all the doors that had closed in their faces. But she also thought about the way Daniel had listened to Lily's multiplication tables, how he'd never pushed or pressured, how he'd shown up this morning with coffee and compassion instead of judgment. "Okay," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "We can try." Lily jumped up, her workbook falling forgotten to the sidewalk. "Really? Oh, Mommy, thank you." "Hold on, sweetie," Emily cautioned, though she couldn't help smiling at her daughter's joy. "This is just a trial run, okay? We're not making any big plans yet." Daniel nodded, respecting her caution. "How about tomorrow morning? 10 o'clock? I'll text you the address." He paused, then added carefully. "And Emily? There's a small apartment above the studio. It's nothing fancy, but it's clean and safe. Consider it part of the arrangement, at least until you get back on your feet." Emily opened her mouth to refuse, but the memory of Lily, shivering in the car last night, stopped her. Sometimes, she realized, accepting help wasn't weakness, it was strength. "One step at a time," she said. "Let's start with the demo." "One step at a time," Daniel agreed, and his smile was gentle and understanding. The morning sun had risen higher now, warming the air around them. Emily picked up her guitar again, and as she began to sing, her voice seemed to carry a new note, something that sounded almost like hope. The morning sun glinted off the weathered brick building as Daniel's car pulled into the small parking lot. Emily gripped her guitar case tightly, her knuckles white with nervous tension. The modest recording studio didn't look impressive from the outside, just a converted warehouse with a faded Crossroads Studio sign hanging above the door. "This is it?" Lily asked, pressing her face against the car window. Her breath left foggy circles on the glass. Daniel smiled, catching her eye in the rearview mirror. "Sometimes the best music comes from the most unexpected places." Emily tried to steady her breathing as they walked to the entrance. The heavy metal door creaked open to reveal a narrow hallway lined with old concert posters and vintage album covers. The carpet was worn but clean, and the air smelled of coffee and wood polish. "Tony?" Daniel called out as they entered the main area. "We're here." A stocky man with salt and pepper hair emerged from behind a mixing board. His flannel shirt had seen better days, but his eyes were sharp and kind. "Daniel Hayes?" he said warmly. "Been too long, my friend." He turned to Emily and Lily, his smile growing wider. "And you must be the voices I've heard so much about." Lily bounced forward. "I'm Lily. Do you make music here?" Tony chuckled. "That we do, little lady. That we do." Emily clutched her guitar closer, taking in the space. The recording booth was small but well maintained, with sound-absorbing panels covering the walls and a single microphone stand in the center. Through the glass, she could see the control room where Tony and Daniel would sit. "Let's get you set up," Daniel said gently, noticing her anxiety. "Just like you do on your corner. Nothing fancy, nothing forced." Emily nodded, unable to find her voice. She followed Tony into the booth, where he helped position the microphone and adjust its height. Her hands trembled as she unpacked her guitar. "Mommy!" Lily called through the glass. She had claimed a spinning chair next to Daniel, her feet dangling. "You look like a real star." Emily managed a weak smile, adjusting the headphones Tony had given her. The booth felt impossibly small, yet somehow vast at the same time. Through the headphones, she heard Daniel's calm voice. "We'll start with Amazing Grace, the way you sang it that first night. Just close your eyes and sing it like you're talking to God. No pressure, no audience, just truth." Emily took a deep breath, her fingers finding their familiar position on the guitar strings. The booth's silence pressed against her ears until she began to strum. The first notes rang clear through the headphones, fuller and richer than she'd ever heard them sound on the street. When she opened her mouth to sing, something extraordinary happened. The fear melted away. The studio disappeared. She wasn't singing for Daniel or Tony or even Lily anymore. She was singing for Tom, her late husband, and for all the lonely nights in the car, and for every prayer that had seemed to go unanswered. Amazing Grace. How sweet the sound. Her voice filled the booth, raw and pure. Each word carried the weight of her journey. The loss, the struggle, the unwavering faith that had somehow survived it all. The guitar became an extension of her heart, each chord pulsing with memories. "Was blind, but now I see." Through her closed eyes, tears began to fall. But her voice never wavered. She poured everything into the hymn. Her gratitude for Daniel's kindness, her fierce love for Lily, her desperate hope for a better tomorrow. The final notes hung in the air like a prayer. Silence followed. Emily opened her eyes, wiping her cheeks quickly with the back of her hand. Through the glass, she saw Lily frozen in mid-spin, her mouth forming a perfect O. Daniel sat perfectly still, his expression unreadable. But it was Tony who caught her attention. The gruff sound engineer was openly wiping tears from his eyes, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he adjusted a dial on the board. "That voice," he said, his words carrying clearly through her headphones. "It's pure truth." Emily felt her chest tighten at his words. She'd sung this song hundreds of times on her street corner. But here, in this small booth, something had changed. For the first time since Tom's death, she felt truly heard. Daniel leaned forward to the microphone. "Emily," he said softly, "would you like to hear it back?" She nodded, unable to speak. As Tony played the recording, Emily barely recognized her own voice. The sound was crystal clear, each note carrying an emotional depth that took her breath away. She heard pain in the verses, yes, but also strength, resilience, and most importantly, hope. Lily pressed her hands against the glass, beaming with pride. "Mommy," she mouthed silently, "you're amazing." Tony switched off the playback, shaking his head in wonder. "In 30 years of recording, I've never—" He paused, collecting himself. "That voice, it's pure truth." Emily sat in the small control room, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. The leather of the old studio chair creaked as she leaned forward, watching Daniel's fingers move across the mixing board with practiced ease. Her heart pounded as he adjusted a few knobs and pressed play. The first notes of her guitar filled the room, crystal clear through the professional speakers. Then her voice emerged, pure, strong, and filled with an aching tenderness that made her catch her breath. She barely recognized herself. "Is that really me?" she whispered. Daniel nodded, his eyes closed as he listened. "That's all you. No effects, no pitch correction, just pure Emily Carter." The song was an old hymn her husband used to love, "It Is Well With My Soul." She'd sung it countless times on street corners, but hearing it now, polished and pristine through the studio monitors, was different. Her voice carried every bit of pain, hope, and faith she'd held onto these past few years. Lily twirled around the small studio space, her arms spread wide like wings. "Mommy, you sound like an angel." She grabbed a pencil from the desk, holding it like a microphone, and started singing along with the recording. Her sweet child's voice harmonized naturally with Emily's recorded one. The sound engineer Tom, an older man with kind eyes and graying temples, dabbed at the corner of his eye with his sleeve. "That voice, it's pure truth. You don't hear that kind of authentic emotion much anymore." Emily felt warmth spread across her cheeks. "I'm just singing what I feel," she said softly. "That's exactly what makes it special," Daniel replied, turning in his chair to face her. His eyes were intense, focused. "You're not trying to impress anyone. You're just sharing your heart, and that's what touches people." They listened to the whole song, Emily growing more amazed with each verse. The quality was so different from the tinny recordings she'd made on her phone. Here, every nuance of her voice was captured. The slight tremor when she sang about peace in times of sorrow, the strength that built up in the chorus, the gentle way she eased into the final notes. "Again, please?" Lily begged, still dancing. She turned her pencil, microphone, into a conductor's baton, directing an imaginary choir. Daniel chuckled and hit play once more. This time, Emily closed her eyes, letting herself really listen. She heard things in her voice she'd never noticed before. Depth, control, and something else. Something that sounded like hope. "I never thought," she started, then had to clear her throat. "I never thought I could sound like that." Tom leaned back in his chair, nodding. "That's what good equipment and the right producer can do. But the talent? That's all yours, honey." Lily had moved on to organizing herself into a one-girl backup choir, carefully positioning herself in different spots around the room for each harmony part. Her enthusiasm was infectious, and Emily found herself smiling despite her exhaustion. "What do you think?" Daniel asked quietly. "Ready to try another one?" Emily nodded, surprising herself with how eager she felt. "Yes, please." They recorded 2 more songs that afternoon. Each time, Emily grew more confident, more willing to let her voice soar. Daniel gave gentle suggestions. When to hold a note longer, when to pull back. But mostly, he just let her sing naturally. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the studio's small windows, Daniel finally called it a day. "That's enough for now. We don't want to strain your voice." While Tom began shutting down the equipment, Lily helped Emily pack up her guitar, chattering excitedly about her future as a backup singer. "Can we come back tomorrow, Mr. Daniel, please?" Daniel caught Emily's eye, understanding passing between them. They both knew tomorrow would bring its own challenges, finding food, staying warm, trying to maintain dignity while living out of a car. "We'll set up another session soon," he promised Lily, ruffling her hair gently. As they walked to the car, Emily felt lighter somehow, despite everything. For a few hours, she'd been more than just a homeless single mom. She'd been a real singer, making real music. The drive back to the parking lot was quiet, Lily dozing in the back seat. Emily watched the familiar streets pass by, her mind still echoing with the sound of her own voice through those studio speakers. When Daniel pulled into the lot, he pretended to be checking something in the glove compartment while Emily gathered their things. She didn't notice his quick movement as he slipped the folded bills into her purse, tucked beneath a pack of tissues. "Thank you," Emily said softly, not wanting to wake Lily. "For everything today." Daniel nodded, his expression gentle but unreadable in the growing darkness. "You did all the hard work, I just pressed some buttons." Emily gathered Lily into her arms, the little girl barely stirring as she carried her to their car. She didn't see Daniel watching them until they were safely inside. Didn't notice him waiting until she'd locked the doors before finally driving away. The autumn wind whipped around the street corner, carrying fallen leaves in swirling patterns near Emily's feet. She adjusted her worn denim jacket, pulled her guitar closer, and began to play. Today felt different. The studio session with Daniel had awakened something in her. A spark of confidence she thought had died with her husband. Her fingers moved across the guitar strings with renewed purpose as she started singing "Bridge Over Troubled Water." Her voice, rich and clear, floated above the usual street noise. A few people who normally hurried past slowed their steps. A businessman removed his earbuds. A mother with a stroller stopped to listen. Lily sat on her usual spot on the sidewalk, homework spread across her lap, but her eyes kept darting up to watch the growing crowd with excitement. More people were stopping now, forming a loose semicircle around Emily. The tip jar at her feet already held more bills than it usually did by this time of day. A young man raised his phone, recording her performance. Then another did the same. Emily felt a flutter of nerves but kept singing, channeling the same energy she'd found in the studio yesterday. She thought of Daniel's words, "Your voice is a gift." For the first time in years, she was starting to believe it. As she finished the song, genuine applause broke out. Not just the polite, scattered clapping she usually received, but real appreciation. Emily felt her cheeks warm as she smiled and nodded her thanks. She started strumming the opening chords to "Amazing Grace," her signature closer. A well-dressed woman in her 50s pushed through the crowd, clutching what looked like a paper in her hand. She waited patiently until Emily finished the hymn, then stepped forward while others were dropping tips in the jar. "Excuse me," the woman said, her eyes bright with recognition. "You're Emily Carter, aren't you? I saw your picture on this." She held up a flyer, and Emily's heart skipped a beat. There on the glossy paper was her name, along with several others, listed as performers for the upcoming Memorial Hospital benefit concert. "Oh yes, that's me," Emily replied, trying to sound more confident than she felt. She hadn't known the flyers were already circulating. The woman opened her designer purse and pulled out her wallet. "I'm on the hospital board. When Daniel Hayes mentioned he'd found an amazing voice singing on street corners, we were skeptical. But now, I understand." She dropped several $20 bills in the tip jar. "You have a remarkable gift, dear. The benefit concert will be better for having you." Emily's throat tightened with emotion. "Thank you," she managed. "That's very kind." "Mommy's going to sing at the big concert," Lily announced proudly to anyone within earshot. Several people in the crowd smiled at her enthusiasm. More phones came out as Emily continued singing. She noticed people showing each other the concert flyer on their phones. Someone must have posted it online. A teenage girl approached shyly between songs and asked if she could take a selfie with Emily. It felt surreal, but Emily agreed, managing a genuine smile despite her nervousness. The afternoon continued like this, with more people than usual stopping to listen. Some mentioned the upcoming concert, and a few even said they planned to attend. The tip jar filled steadily. Not enough to solve their housing crisis, but enough to perhaps get them a motel room for tonight, instead of sleeping in the car again. As the sun began to set and the autumn chill deepened, Emily packed up her guitar. Lily helped collect the tip jar money, her small fingers carefully straightening each bill. A final group of listeners dispersed, several stopping to say they looked forward to seeing her at the concert. Emily's phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Check your email. Just sent the official concert details. 2 weeks from Saturday. You're going to be amazing." She stared at the message, reality settling in. She was really going to perform at an actual concert venue, not just a street corner. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. She thought of all the people filming her today, how word was already spreading. Perhaps Daniel had been right. Perhaps her music really could change their lives. Lily tugged at her sleeve, breaking her reverie. "Can we get hot chocolate, Mommy, to celebrate?" Emily counted the day's tips again, more than triple her usual take. "You know what? Yes, we can." She gathered their things, holding Lily's small hand in hers as they walked toward the corner cafe. "But first, tell me honestly, are you scared about this concert thing?" Lily shook her head emphatically. "Nope, you're the best singer in the whole world. Everyone's gonna love you, just like Mr. Daniel said." Emily squeezed her daughter's hand, fighting back tears. Despite sleeping in their car, despite all the uncertainty, Lily's faith never wavered. Maybe it was time for Emily's faith to be just as strong. Inside the warm cafe, as Lily happily sipped her hot chocolate, Emily opened the email from Daniel. The benefit concert details were clear and official. Her name listed among the performers, stage times, rehearsal schedules. It wasn't just talk anymore. In 2 weeks, she would step onto a real stage and sing for hundreds of people. She looked at Lily's chocolate-smeared smile and felt a surge of determination. This wasn't just about music anymore. This was about giving her daughter the life she deserved, about honoring her late husband's memory by not giving up, about trusting that sometimes miracles came in unexpected forms, like a famous producer stopping to listen on a street corner. Emily took a deep breath and hit reply on the email. "I'll be there. Thank you for believing in me." The cafe's warmth surrounded them as the early evening darkness settled outside. Through the window, Emily could see her street corner, where just hours ago her life had taken another surprising turn. 2 weeks to prepare for the biggest performance of her life. 2 weeks to prove that Daniel's faith in her wasn't misplaced. Lily's voice broke through her thoughts. "We should practice extra hard now, right, Mommy?" Emily smiled, reaching across the table to wipe chocolate from her daughter's chin. "Yes, baby, we absolutely should." A young barista approached their table, holding out her phone. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I saw you singing today. Would you mind if I followed your social media? I'd love to know when you're performing again." Emily blinked in surprise. "Oh, I don't actually have any social media for my music yet." "You should make some," the barista encouraged. "The videos people took today are already getting shared like crazy." Emily nodded politely, adding it to her mental list of things to figure out. One step at a time, she reminded herself. First, the benefit concert. Then, maybe, the rest of her dreams might follow. The neon sign of Mary's Diner cast a warm glow through the rain-streaked windows. Inside, tucked away in a corner booth, Emily watched Daniel stir his coffee for the 3rd time, the spoon clinking softly against the ceramic mug. Lily sat beside her, contentedly coloring on her placemat with the crayons the waitress had brought. "I used to be somebody," Daniel said quietly, his eyes fixed on the swirling coffee. "Had my name on platinum records, worked with the biggest stars." He paused, a shadow crossing his face. "Then it all fell apart." Emily wrapped her hands around her own coffee mug, absorbing its warmth. The diner's evening crowd was thin, just a few regulars scattered at the counter and a couple of truckers having late dinners. Their booth felt like an island of privacy, in the gentle murmur of conversation and clinking silverware. "What happened?" Emily asked softly, recognizing the pain in his voice. It was the same kind she carried. Daniel leaned back against the vinyl seat, his shoulders heavy with memory. "My partner, Jack Morrison. We built the studio together, shared everything 50-50. I trusted him like a brother." He shook his head slowly. "While I was focused on the music, he was quietly moving assets, changing contracts. One morning, I came to work and found the locks changed. He'd stolen everything. The company, the rights to our productions, even my reputation." The waitress appeared with their orders, a chicken sandwich for Daniel, spaghetti and meatballs for Lily, and a simple salad for Emily. She waited until the waitress left before speaking. "That must have been devastating," she said, watching him push his plate aside slightly. "I could have fought it," Daniel continued, his voice thick with old hurt. "Had enough evidence for a lawsuit. But the betrayal, it broke something in me. I walked away from everything, started traveling, taking odd jobs, living out of hotels." He gave a bitter smile. "Never stayed anywhere long enough to trust again. Never married, never had kids. Music was my only real relationship, and even that became painful." Lily looked up from her careful twirling of spaghetti, her eyes wide and understanding in that way children sometimes have. Emily felt her heartache for both of them, this lonely man and her fatherless daughter. "I know about trust," Emily said, pushing a tomato around her plate. "After Tom, my husband, died, people kept saying they'd help. Family, friends, church members. But gradually, they all drifted away. The casseroles stopped coming. The offers to babysit disappeared. Eventually, it was just Lily and me." Daniel's eyes met hers, and for a moment they shared a look of perfect understanding. Two wounded souls who'd learned the hard way that the world could be cruel. "Is that why you sing on the street corner?" he asked gently. Emily nodded, absently stroking Lily's hair. "It started when I lost my waitressing job. The diner closed suddenly and no one was hiring. We had bills piling up, and I remembered how Tom always loved my singing." She smiled softly at the memory. "He used to say my voice could heal broken hearts. So I thought, why not? At least it's honest work." "Your husband was right about your voice," Daniel said, finally taking a bite of his sandwich. "It has something special, something raw and real. You don't just sing the notes, you live them." The compliment brought warmth to Emily's cheeks. She wasn't used to praise anymore, especially not from someone who truly understood music. "Mommy sings me to sleep every night," Lily piped up, sauce dotting her chin. "Even in the car." Daniel's expression shifted slightly. "In the car?" Emily tensed, but before she could speak, Lily continued cheerfully. "That's where we sleep now. Mommy makes it like camping, with blankets and stories. But it gets cold sometimes." The silence that followed was heavy. Emily couldn't meet Daniel's eyes, shame burning in her chest. She hadn't wanted him to know how bad things had gotten. "Emily," he said softly, but she cut him off. "We're managing," she said firmly, though her voice wavered slightly. "It's temporary. Once I save enough for a deposit—" "Let me help," Daniel interrupted, his voice gentle but urgent. "I have connections, resources." "No." Emily's response was automatic, sharp. Years of pride and independence made accepting help feel like failure. "We're not a charity case." Daniel fell silent, respecting her boundary but clearly troubled. The remainder of the meal passed quietly, with only Lily's occasional humming breaking the tension. As they were finishing, Daniel pulled out his wallet to pay. Emily noticed his hands trembling slightly as he sorted through the bills. She realized that for all his success, he was just as broken as she was, maybe more so. At least she had Lily's love to keep her going. The little girl had been watching them both carefully throughout dinner, her young mind processing things in its own way. Now, as Daniel placed the money on the table, Lily did something that caught them both by surprise. She slipped out of her seat and moved around to Daniel's side of the booth. Without hesitation, she reached out and took his hand in her small one. His eyes widened at the contact, and Emily saw something crack in his carefully maintained facade. "You don't have to be lonely anymore," Lily whispered, her innocent words carrying the weight of truth that only children seem able to deliver. Daniel stared at their joined hands, speechless. Emily watched as his eyes grew bright with unshed tears, and she felt her own walls beginning to crumble. In that moment, something shifted between them all, a quiet understanding that perhaps they weren't meant to face their broken places alone. The diner's neon light continued to glow through the windows, casting soft colors across their table as they sat in that moment of connection, none of them quite ready to let it end. The backstage hallway hummed with nervous energy. Emily stood in front of a scratched mirror, barely recognizing herself in the navy blue dress she'd found at the thrift store. She'd carefully mended the loose hem and polished the simple silver cross necklace her husband had given her years ago. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. "5 minutes, Mrs. Carter," a stagehand called out, clipboard in hand. Emily's stomach lurched. The benefit concert hall was packed, over 300 people waiting to hear her sing. Through the thick curtain, she could hear the current performer finishing their set. Soon it would be her turn. Lily tugged at her dress. "You look pretty, Mommy." Her daughter wore her best church dress, a pink hand-me-down that still looked fresh and sweet. "Thank you, sweetheart." Emily tried to smile, but her reflection showed how pale she'd become. The last time she'd performed for more than a street corner crowd was at her wedding. That felt like a lifetime ago. Heavy footsteps approached, and Daniel appeared in the mirror behind her. He wore a simple black suit that made him look more distinguished than usual, though his eyes held their familiar, gentle concern. "How are you holding up?" he asked softly. Emily turned, wringing her hands. "I can't do this. These people, they're expecting something special. What if I let them down? What if my voice cracks? What if—" "Emily." Daniel's steady voice, cut through her spiral of worry. He placed his hands on her shoulders, warm and reassuring. "Remember why you're here." She took a shaky breath. "To help other families, families like us." "That's right." He squeezed her shoulders gently. "This isn't about being perfect. It's about being real." Lily wrapped her arms around Emily's waist. "You're going to be amazing, Mommy, just like when you sing me to sleep." Emily's eyes welled up, but she blinked back the tears to protect her minimal makeup. The applause from the main hall grew louder as the previous act finished. 2 minutes, the stagehand called. Emily's heart thundered in her chest. "I haven't performed on a real stage since Tom." Her voice caught on her late husband's name. Daniel's expression softened with understanding. He took her trembling hands in his. "May I pray with you?" Emily nodded, grateful for the anchor of his calm presence. Daniel bowed his head, and she followed suit, feeling Lily's small hands join theirs. "Dear Lord," Daniel began, his voice low and sincere, "we thank you for bringing Emily to this moment. We thank you for her gift, for her strength, and for her heart to help others. Please give her peace, as she shares the voice you blessed her with. Let her feel your presence with every note, and let those who hear her be moved by your spirit through her song. Amen." "Amen," Emily whispered, surprised to find her hands had stopped shaking. The stagehand appeared again. "Mrs. Carter, you're on." Emily knelt to hug Lily tight. "Wait right here with Mr. Daniel, okay?" "Break a leg, Mommy!" Lily grinned, showing her missing front tooth. Daniel gave Emily's shoulder one final squeeze. "Just sing it like you did in the studio. Straight from the heart." Emily nodded, took a deep breath, and followed the stagehand through the maze of black curtains. The stage lights felt hot and bright, making her blink as she approached the microphone stand. The audience was a dark blur beyond the footlights, but she could feel hundreds of eyes on her. The piano introduction began, soft and familiar. Emily closed her eyes, remembering the countless times she'd sung this hymn on her street corner. She thought of Tom, of Lily, of the nights in their car, of Daniel's quiet faith in her gift. She thought of all the other mothers out there, struggling just like her. When she opened her eyes again, the fear had melted away. She was no longer singing for herself. She was singing for all of them. Emily drew a deep breath, and her first note rose clear and pure into the hushed air. The sound filled every corner of the hall with a grace that surprised even her. In that moment, she felt something shift inside her chest, a warmth, a certainty, a sense that maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be all right. The piano followed her lead as she continued into the first verse, her voice growing stronger with each word. Through the stage lights, she could just make out Lily and Daniel standing in the wings, watching with matching expressions of wonder. And somewhere, she felt Tom watching too, smiling down on her as she sang their song. The last note of "Amazing Grace" hung in the air like a prayer. For a heartbeat, silence filled the old community theater. Then, as if a dam broke, applause thundered through the room. People rose to their feet, one by one, until the entire audience stood cheering. Emily blinked under the bright stage lights, her guitar held close to her chest like a shield. Tears sparkled on the faces before her. Elderly men dabbing their eyes with handkerchiefs, mothers hugging their children, teenagers with phones forgotten in their hands. In the front row, little Lily bounced up and down, her face beaming with pride. Next to her, Daniel's usually stern expression had softened into something tender and warm. He nodded at Emily, a simple gesture that spoke volumes. "You did it." "Ladies and gentlemen," the event organizer stepped onto the stage, his voice thick with emotion. "Emily Carter, everyone!" The applause swelled again. Emily's legs trembled as she made her way to the microphone. "Thank you," she whispered, the words catching in her throat. "This song, it got me through some dark times. I hope it brought you some light, too." More cheers erupted. In the lobby, volunteers struggled to keep up with the donation boxes. People lined up, pulling out checkbooks and cash. "For families like hers," they said, pressing money into the volunteers' hands. "No child should sleep in a car." Emily's heart soared as she watched from the wings. For the first time since losing her husband, joy bubbled up inside her, pure and bright, like sunshine after rain. This wasn't just about the money. It was about being heard, being seen, being valued for the gift God had given her. Daniel appeared beside her, offering a paper cup of water. "You moved them," he said quietly. "That's what real music does. It reaches right into people's souls." Lily crashed into Emily's legs, wrapping her arms tight around her mother's waist. "Mommy, you were just like an angel. Everyone said so." Emily laughed, scooping her daughter up despite her tired arms. "Angels have better dresses, sweetie." She kissed Lily's cheek, breathing in the familiar scent of drugstore shampoo and childhood innocence. The event organizer approached with an envelope. "The preliminary count from donations," he said, pressing it into Emily's free hand. "People want to help. They want to be part of your story." Emily peeked inside and gasped. The amount was more than she'd earned in the past 3 months of street singing. Enough for a deposit on a small apartment, maybe even a few months' rent. "God is good," she whispered, hugging Lily closer. "Always," Daniel agreed. His hand rested briefly on her shoulder, warm and steadying. People filtered backstage. Local newspaper reporters, church group leaders, others wanting to talk about booking her for events. Emily felt overwhelmed by their kindness, their genuine desire to help. "You've got a special gift," one elderly woman said, pressing a business card into Emily's hand. "Our church would be blessed to have you sing for us." In the shadows of the theater's back entrance, unnoticed by the celebrating group, a man in an expensive suit watched. Marcus Reed's calculating eyes took in everything. Emily's raw talent, the audience's reaction, and especially Daniel Hayes's protective presence beside her. A smirk played across his face as he pulled out his phone, already planning his next move. The community theater buzzed with energy long after the official event ended. People lingered, sharing stories of how the music had touched them. Volunteers counted donations, their expressions growing more amazed by the minute. Emily sat on the edge of the stage, Lily dozing against her side. Her guitar case was filled with business cards, small cash donations, and hastily scribbled phone numbers. The weight of worry that had pressed on her shoulders for so long felt lighter. Daniel leaned against the stage nearby, fielding questions from people who recognized him. He deflected attention gracefully, always turning the conversation back to Emily's performance. "Your mommy did good tonight," he said softly to Lily, who stirred and smiled sleepily. "I knew she would," Lily mumbled. "She always does good. People just needed to listen." Emily's heart swelled at her daughter's simple faith. She looked out at the nearly empty theater, remembering how it had felt to stand in the light, to sing her heart out, to be heard. For the first time in years, she dared to dream again. Marcus Reed slipped away from the theater, already plotting. In one hand, he held a recording of Emily's performance captured on his phone. In the other, he clutched a crumpled program with Daniel Hayes's name listed as special advisor. His smirk deepened as he disappeared into the night. The morning sun cast long shadows across the diner's parking lot as Emily guided Lily toward their usual breakfast spot. After last night's triumph at the benefit concert, she'd treated herself to splurging on proper pancakes for her daughter. The bell chimed as they pushed through the glass door, the smell of coffee and maple syrup wrapping around them like a warm blanket. "Can I have chocolate chips in mine today, Mommy?" Lily asked, sliding into their regular booth by the window. "Please, since you were amazing last night?" Emily smiled, smoothing her daughter's hair. "Just this once, sweetie. But don't tell Mr. Daniel. He says too much sugar makes you bounce off the walls." As they waited for their order, Emily couldn't help but notice the stares from other customers. Some had been at the concert last night, and their whispered conversations made her cheeks warm. She wasn't used to being recognized. The pancakes arrived, steam rising from the perfectly golden stack. Lily had just stabbed her first chocolate-studded bite when Emily's phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Running late for our studio session. Start without me?" Emily texted back a quick "okay" and returned to her coffee. That's when she noticed him, a well-dressed man in an expensive suit, watching her from across the diner. He stood, straightening his tie, and walked toward their table with practiced confidence. Emily Carter? His smile was too perfect, too rehearsed. Marcus Sterling, Sterling Records. He extended a manicured hand. Mind if we chat outside for a moment? Emily glanced at Lily, who was absorbed in her pancakes. Sugar, stay right here, where I can see you through the window, okay? Mommy needs to talk to someone. The morning air was crisp as Emily stepped outside. Marcus Sterling's shoes probably cost more than her monthly grocery budget. Remarkable performance last night, he said, leaning against the brick wall. Raw talent like yours comes along once in a decade, but you're wasting it on charity shows. Emily's guard went up. I'm working with Daniel Hayes. Sterling's laugh was sharp. Hayes? The has-been, who disappeared years ago? Listen, sweetheart. I can make you a star. Real studios, real money, real tours. Everything a single mom needs to give her little girl the life she deserves. He pulled out a business card, thick and glossy. I checked. You're living in your car, right? I can have you in a furnished apartment by tonight. Advanced payment. 5-figure signing bonus. Emily's heart hammered. The amount he mentioned could change everything for Lily. There's just one condition, Sterling continued, his voice dropping. Drop Hayes. He's yesterday's news, and he'll drag you down with him. I know him. Worked with him before he cracked. He's unstable, unreliable. You need someone who can actually deliver on promises. Emily's fingers tightened around the card. Daniel's been nothing but kind to us. Kind doesn't pay bills, honey. Kind doesn't put your girl through college. Sterling's smile turned predatory. I'm offering you everything. Real success. Real security. All you have to do is tell Hayes goodbye. Through the diner window, Emily could see Lily chatting with their regular waitress, chocolate smeared on her cheek. The thought of a real home, of never having to worry about food or rent again. Think about it, Sterling pressed. But don't think too long. This offer expires in 24 hours. He pulled out another card, this one with a phone number scrawled on the back. That's my personal line. When you're ready to change your life, call me. He walked away, leaving Emily standing there with 2 cards in her trembling hands. She took a deep breath and turned to go back inside, but stopped short. A woman in a navy blazer was approaching her car, clipboard in hand. The official badge on her hip made Emily's blood run cold. Department of Child Services. The woman was writing something, her face stern as she looked at Emily's old sedan with its blankets and pillows visible in the back seat. Emily's legs felt like lead as she watched the social worker tape a notice to her driver's side window. Their eyes met across the parking lot. The woman's gaze held no malice, only professional concern, but that almost made it worse. Without a word, she turned and walked to her government-issued vehicle. Emily forced herself forward, each step feeling like miles. The notice crinkled under her fingers as she pulled it from the window. The words swam before her eyes. Investigation opened. Unsafe living conditions. Minor child. Immediate action required. Her vision blurred. Through the diner window she could still see Lily, innocent and unaware, happily finishing her pancakes. The 2 business cards burned in her pocket like hot coals, while the official notice in her hand felt heavy as stone. Marcus Sterling's words echoed in her head. Everything a single mom needs. The social services notice trembled in her grip, threatening to tear her world apart. Emily stood frozen between her car and the diner, caught between temptation and terror, as the morning sun continued its climb into an indifferent sky. The late afternoon sun painted the studio walls in amber hues as Emily paced back and forth, her hands trembling. Daniel sat quietly in his producer's chair, watching her with concern in his eyes. The social services notice, crumpled in her fist, felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. This is your fault, Emily's voice cracked as she spun to face him. We were invisible before. Safe. Now everyone's watching us, judging us. Her eyes glistened with angry tears. I trusted you. Daniel leaned forward, his weathered face etched with worry. Emily, please, let me help. Help? She laughed bitterly. Like Marcus Powell wants to help me? Did you know he'd be at the concert? Did you set this up? Marcus? Daniel's face darkened at his former partner's name. What did he say to you? Emily pulled the rival producer's business card from her pocket and slapped it on the mixing console. He offered me everything. A record deal, a home for Lily, security. Her voice dropped to a whisper. All I have to do is leave you behind. You can't trust him, Daniel said, standing up. Marcus steals people's dreams. He'll promise you the world and leave you with nothing. At least nothing would be something I'm used to, Emily shouted, making Lily look up from her coloring book in the corner. Right now, I might lose my daughter because we're living in a car. A car, Daniel. And where were you, standing in the shadows, watching me sing while social services took notes? Daniel reached for her shoulder, but she jerked away. I didn't know they were there. Emily, we can fight this. Together. Together? Emily's laugh was hollow. There is no together. There's just me and Lily, like always. And now, thanks to all this attention, I might lose her too. She grabbed her guitar case, hefting it over her shoulder. I should have known better than to believe in fairy tales. Mommy? Lily's small voice quivered. Are we leaving Mr. Daniel? Emily's face crumpled for a moment before she steadied herself. Come on, baby, we need to go. But he's our friend, Lily protested, clutching her drawing. He makes you smile again. Sometimes friends aren't what they seem, sweetie. Emily took Lily's hand, avoiding Daniel's pained expression. Sometimes they just make things worse. Daniel stepped forward, his voice urgent. Don't do this, Emily. Don't let fear push away the good things God's bringing into your life. Marcus Powell is not the answer. Emily paused at the studio door, her back rigid. And you are? The famous producer who ran away from his own life? Who hides in small studios instead of facing the world? She turned, tears streaming now. I needed someone strong enough to fight for us, Daniel. Not someone who's still running from his own shadows. The words hit Daniel like physical blows. He sank back into his chair, watching helplessly as Emily led Lily away. The little girl looked back, her face confused and frightened, before the door closed behind them. Hours passed. The studio grew dark as evening settled in. Daniel sat motionless, Emily's words echoing in his mind. She was right. He had been running from his past, from responsibility, from the chance to make a difference. And now his cowardice might cost two precious souls their future. In the parking lot of a quiet church, Emily's old car sat beneath a streetlight. Inside, Lily curled up in her blanket, her small face serious in the dim light. Emily pretended to read a magazine, but her eyes were unfocused, tears occasionally sliding down her cheeks. Can we say our prayers now, Mommy? Lily asked softly. Emily wiped her eyes quickly. Of course, baby. Go ahead. Lily folded her hands and closed her eyes tight. Dear God, she began, her voice clear and trusting. Thank you for Mommy's beautiful songs. And for the nice people who gave us money at the concert. She paused, sniffling slightly. And please send my daddy back. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Lily, honey, but Lily wasn't finished. I know my real daddy is in heaven with you, God, but Mr. Daniel, he feels like a daddy. He makes Mommy laugh again, and he listens to my stories, and he prays with us. Her voice wobbled. Please don't let him go away too. Please send him back. Unknown to them, Daniel stood in the shadows of the church, having followed them to ensure they were safe. Lily's innocent prayer pierced straight through his heart, breaking down the walls he'd built over years of disappointment and fear. Tears rolled freely down his face as he listened to the pure faith of a child asking God for a father. I miss him already, Lily whispered, curling closer to her mother. Can't we go back, Mommy? Please? Emily gathered her daughter close, her own tears falling into Lily's soft hair. It's complicated, baby. Sometimes, grown-ups have to make hard choices to keep the people they love safe. But Mr. Daniel keeps us safe, Lily protested sleepily. He says God sent him to help us. Don't you believe that, Mommy? Emily didn't answer, just held her daughter tighter as Lily drifted off to sleep. In the quiet of the car, her daughter's prayer hung in the air like a challenge, a reminder of what truly mattered. Not fame, not security bought with compromised principles, but love, pure and brave enough to risk being hurt again. Daniel stood rooted to the spot, Lily's words burning in his soul. "Please, send my daddy back." In that moment, he understood that running away had never been the answer. God had led him to this corner, to this family, not just to help them, but to heal his own broken spirit through their love and faith. The streetlights cast long shadows as Daniel walked through the empty streets of downtown. His footsteps echoed off brick buildings, matching the heavy rhythm of his thoughts. Lily's innocent prayer from earlier that evening played over and over in his mind. "God, please send my daddy back." He stopped at the corner where he'd first heard Emily sing. The metal tip jar wasn't there now, but he could still see them in his mind, mother and daughter, surviving on hope and harmony. His chest tightened as he remembered Lily's small face looking up at him with complete trust, the way she'd slip her tiny hand into his during their diner meals. "I won't walk away," he'd promised. Yet here he was, letting his old fears hold him back from fighting for them. A cold wind whipped around the corner, and Daniel pulled his jacket tighter. He'd been walking for hours, but sleep felt impossible. The neon signs of late-night businesses flickered above him like judgmental eyes. In one shop window, he caught his reflection tired, graying at the temples, lines etched deep around his eyes. When had he become this man who hid from life instead of living it? He found himself in the park, where Lily had once shown him her collection of special rocks, ordinary pebbles that she insisted were magical because they sparkled in just the right light. "You have to believe to see it," she told him seriously. Daniel touched the smooth stone she'd given him, still in his pocket after all these weeks. The eastern sky began to lighten, pale purple bleeding into the darkness. Daniel watched the sunrise from a bench, his decision crystallizing with the growing light. He'd walked away from the music industry years ago because one man's betrayal had poisoned everything he loved about it. Now Marcus Powell, that same betrayer, was trying to do it again, this time threatening not just a career but a family. The morning air felt sharp in his lungs as Daniel stood. His legs were stiff from walking all night, but his mind was clear. He wouldn't let history repeat itself. Emily's voice deserved to be heard, but on her terms, with people who valued more than just profit. And Lily, that precious child, deserved a stable home, not a backseat bed. Daniel pulled out his phone and made 3 calls before heading to his car. The first was to his old lawyer, who owed him a favor. The second was to a realtor friend who specialized in emergency housing situations. The third was to the studio, booking time for later that week. Emily might not want to see him right now, but he would have everything in place when she was ready. He drove through the awakening city to his condo, showered quickly, and changed into a crisp white shirt and dark suit. His hands were steady as he knotted his tie, the expensive one he hadn't worn since leaving the industry. Today, he needed to look every inch the powerful producer he'd once been. The elevator ride to Marcus Powell's penthouse office felt endless. Daniel's reflection in the polished brass doors showed a different man than the one who'd walked all night. His jaw was set, his eyes clear and determined, the stone in his pocket pressed against his leg, reminding him of Lily's unwavering faith. The receptionist tried to stop him, but Daniel walked past her desk with the confidence of someone who belonged. He could hear Marcus's voice through the partially open door of his office, that familiar oily tone that had once cost Daniel everything. "I don't care about the mother's situation," Marcus was saying into his phone. "Get me those contracts. The girl's a gold mine waiting to be—" Daniel pushed the door open, letting it bang against the wall. Marcus looked up, his perfectly groomed eyebrows rising in mock surprise. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, setting it down with exaggerated care. "Daniel Hayes." Marcus spread his hands in a welcoming gesture. "The prodigal producer returns. Come to wish me luck with my newest discovery?" "You're going to stay away from Emily Carter," Daniel said, his voice low and steady. He planted his hands on Marcus's expensive desk, leaning forward. "You're not going to contact her, approach her, or send any more of your people to make offers." Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, a smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. "And why would I do that? Because you ask nicely? The industry's changed, Daniel. You're yesterday's news. Because if you don't, Daniel said, I'll finally release those recordings from 10 years ago. The ones where you admit to stealing my artists, falsifying contracts, bribing judges. I kept them, Marcus. Every single one. The smirk faltered. Marcus's face flushed red, then pale. You're bluffing. You destroyed those in the settlement. You assumed I did. Daniel straightened up, adjusting his cuffs. I kept them as insurance. Never thought I'd need them until now. He pulled out his phone, tapped it a few times, and a familiar conversation filled the room. Marcus's voice, slightly younger but unmistakable, detailing exactly how he'd cheated Daniel out of his company. Marcus lunged for the phone, but Daniel pulled it back. That's just a copy. The originals are very safe, with very specific instructions if anything happens to me or to Emily Carter. What do you want? Marcus's voice had lost its smoothness. I told you. Stay away from Emily. No contracts, no offers, no chance meetings. She's off limits. Daniel turned to leave, then paused at the door. And Marcus? If I hear you've been asking about where she and her daughter are staying, those recordings go public. Understand? Marcus's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. You can't protect them forever. Daniel thought of Lily's prayer, of Emily's voice lifting hearts in the studio, of quiet diner meals and shared dreams. Watch me, he said, and walked out of the office, leaving Marcus Powell and all his old fears behind. Daniel sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by stacks of paper and his laptop. His fingers flew across the keyboard as he typed out an impassioned message to the local community Facebook group. The words poured straight from his heart. Our town has an angel singing on its street corners. Her name is Emily Carter. She's a widow raising a 7-year-old daughter alone. They're sleeping in their car, but she won't beg. Instead, she gives us the gift of her voice. Now, it's our turn to give back. He hit post and reached for his phone. First call, Pastor Mike at First Methodist, then Sarah at the local radio station. Next, his old friend who owned the coffee shop downtown. With each call, the network grew. By noon the next day, the town was buzzing. The coffee shop set up a donation jar with Emily and Lily's photo. The church organized a clothing drive. The local diner offered free meals. Sarah's morning show featured Emily's story, playing recordings from the benefit concert that had moved so many to tears. I've never heard such raw honesty in a voice, Sarah said on air. This is our neighbor, folks. She could be any of us. Daniel stood in the back of the coffee shop, watching people drop bills into the donation jar. A retired teacher emptied her purse. A construction worker added his lunch money. Children brought piggy banks. Mr. Daniel! Lily's voice rang out as she and Emily entered the shop for their usual afternoon stop. The little girl froze, taking in the scene. Her photo was everywhere. People were turning, smiling, reaching for their wallets. Emily's face flushed. Daniel, what is all this? He stepped forward, hands in his pockets. This is community, Emily. This is people helping people. An elderly woman approached Emily, pressing a casserole dish into her hands. My Henry used to love my chicken pot pie. You two come by for another one any time. Tears welled in Emily's eyes. I can't accept. You can and you will, the woman insisted, patting Emily's cheek. We take care of our own here. The local real estate agent, Mrs. Henderson, pushed through the growing crowd. I have a furnished apartment above my office. It's yours, until you get back on your feet. No arguments. Lily bounced on her toes. A real bed, Mommy? Emily's hands trembled. The social worker. Already handled, Daniel said softly. The whole town's vouching for you. You're not alone anymore. The afternoon became a blur of kindness. People kept coming, bringing gift cards, home-cooked meals, warm blankets. The donation jar overflowed. The local bank opened a trust fund for Lily's education. As the sun began to set, Daniel drove Emily and Lily to the apartment above Mrs. Henderson's real estate office. It was small but clean, with 2 bedrooms and a kitchen stocked with groceries. Warm light spilled from table lamps. A teddy bear sat on Lily's bed, wearing a ribbon. Look, Mommy. Lily ran to the window. We can see the whole town." Emily stood in the middle of the living room, arms wrapped around herself. "I don't know how to thank everyone." "Just keep singing," Daniel said. "That's all anyone wants." Lily yawned, the excitement of the day catching up with her. Emily lifted her daughter, whose head drooped against her shoulder. Together, they walked to the small bedroom, where a proper bed waited with fresh sheets and fluffy pillows. Emily laid Lily down gently, tucking her in. The little girl was already half asleep, clutching the new teddy bear. Tears rolled down Emily's cheeks as she smoothed her daughter's hair. "Sweet dreams, my angel," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. For the first time in weeks, her daughter would sleep warm and safe, surrounded by the love of an entire town. The weight of gratitude overwhelmed her. Emily sank to her knees beside the bed, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. After so many nights of worry, of trying to keep Lily warm in their car, of wondering if she was failing as a mother, here was proof that God hadn't forgotten them after all. Daniel stood quietly in the doorway, watching this tender moment between mother and daughter. He saw Emily's tears not as weakness, but as the release of weeks of fear and loneliness. The town's generosity had done more than provide shelter. It had restored faith. Lily stirred slightly in her sleep, a peaceful smile on her face. Emily leaned down and kissed her forehead, then rose carefully from beside the bed. Her cheeks were wet, but her eyes shone with something that had been missing for too long: hope. She turned to find Daniel still in the doorway, his expression gentle. No words were needed. Sometimes gratitude runs too deep for speech. Emily simply nodded, acknowledging everything this day had meant, everything the community had given them. Most importantly, they had given Lily back her childhood, starting with this warm bed and the promise of better days ahead. The glass and steel building stretched toward the sky like a modern cathedral. Emily Carter stood on the sidewalk, gripping Lily's small hand as she stared up at the gleaming structure. Her reflection in the polished windows showed a woman transformed from the street singer she'd been just weeks ago. She wore a simple but elegant navy dress, a gift from the community's clothing drive. Her hair was neatly styled, and her shoes, though second-hand, sparkled with fresh polish. "It's so tall, Mommy." Lily bounced on her toes, her yellow sundress fluttering in the morning breeze. "Like it goes right up to heaven." Daniel Hayes stood beside them, his usual casual attire replaced by a crisp business suit. He checked his watch and placed a gentle hand on Emily's shoulder. "Ready?" Emily swallowed hard. "What if I'm not good enough? What if they don't—" "Stop right there," Daniel interrupted softly. "Remember what Pastor Mike said at Sunday service? About David facing Goliath?" Lily piped up. "He wasn't scared because God was with him." "That's right, sweetheart." Daniel smiled at the child, then turned back to Emily. "You've faced bigger giants than this, Emily. You've sung through harder times on that street corner." They walked through the revolving doors into a lobby that took Emily's breath away. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, with a crystal chandelier casting rainbow specks across marble floors. A massive cross of brushed steel adorned one wall, alongside the words "Grace Notes Records" in elegant script. At the reception desk, a friendly woman greeted them. "Mr. Hayes, welcome back." She smiled warmly at Emily and Lily. "And you must be Emily Carter. We've been looking forward to meeting you." Emily managed a shy nod as Daniel handled the paperwork. Her hands were trembling. In her mind, she could still hear the whoosh of cars passing her street corner, the clink of coins in her tip jar. Now here she was, about to audition for a real record label. They took the elevator to the 5th floor. Lily hummed softly, swinging their joined hands. "You know what, Mommy? When you sing, the angels sing with you. I hear them sometimes." Emily's heart squeezed. She looked down at her daughter's innocent face and felt tears threatening. How many nights had this precious child slept in their car, never complaining, always believing things would get better? The elevator doors opened to a hallway lined with gold and platinum records. Emily's steps faltered as she read the names, artists whose songs she'd sung on her corner, whose music had carried her through the darkest days after losing her husband. They were led to a waiting area outside the audition room. Through the glass walls, Emily could see several people seated at a long table, executives in suits, producers with headphones around their necks. 5 minutes, the assistant told them, with an encouraging smile. Emily's legs felt weak. She sank into a chair, trying to remember how to breathe. Daniel crouched in front of her, his eyes kind but serious. "Emily, listen to me. You're not here because of luck or chance. You're here because God gave you a gift that needs to be shared. Those people in there," he gestured toward the audition room, "they're just people who need to hear what hope sounds like." Lily climbed into Emily's lap, wrapping small arms around her neck. "Remember when you sang to me in the car, Mommy? When I was scared of the thunder? You made it not scary anymore." Emily hugged her daughter close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair. She thought of all the moments they'd shared, singing hymns in their car home, harmonizing through tears and laughter, holding on to faith when it was all they had left. The assistant reappeared. "They're ready for you, Miss Carter." Emily stood, smoothing her dress. Daniel took Lily's hand, preparing to wait outside with her. Before Emily could step toward the door, Daniel touched her arm. "Sing like you're praying," he whispered. The audition room was smaller than Emily expected, with wood-paneled walls and warm lighting that reminded her of a church sanctuary. 3 judges sat behind a polished mahogany table, their faces kind but unreadable. A single microphone stood in the center of the room, waiting. Daniel squeezed Emily's hand one last time before leading Lily to chairs along the wall. The little girl clutched her worn teddy bear, eyes wide with wonder, as she watched her mother step up to the microphone. "Whenever you're ready, Mrs. Carter," said the woman in the middle, her silver hair gleaming under the soft lights. "What will you be singing for us today?" Emily's hands trembled as she adjusted the microphone. "Amazing Grace," she said softly. But, with some changes, my husband and I used to sing before he passed." The judges exchanged glances. The youngest one, a man with wire-rimmed glasses, leaned forward. "Take your time." Emily closed her eyes, remembering all the nights she'd sung this on street corners, all the times it had given her strength when hope seemed lost. Her first note wavered slightly, uncertain as a sparrow's first flight. Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Her voice cracked on sound, and she felt heat rise to her cheeks. From the corner of her eye, she saw Lily squeeze her teddy bear tighter. Daniel sat perfectly still, his eyes never leaving her. Emily took a deep breath, thinking of all the prayers sung on cold street corners, of Lily sleeping in their car, of Daniel's unwavering faith in her gift. Something shifted inside her chest, like a key turning in a lock. When she began again, her voice emerged pure and clear as mountain spring water. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound, that saved a wretch like me." The judges' pens stilled on their notepads. The woman with silver hair slowly removed her glasses, her eyes glistening. Emily let the familiar words carry her, adding the gentle harmonies she and her late husband had crafted during happier times. Her voice soared to the rafters, filled with all the pain and hope and faith of her journey. "Through many dangers, toils, and snares, I have already come," she wove in fragments of other hymns, building a tapestry of praise and testimony. The acoustic panels seemed to disappear, and she was back on her street corner, singing her prayers to the sky. The youngest judge wiped his eyes discreetly. The third judge, a man with salt and pepper hair, gripped the edge of the table, transfixed. "When we've been there 10,000 years?" Bright, shining as the sun. Emily's voice swelled with the final verses, years of hardship and determination pouring through every note. She sang of grace that carried her through sleepless nights in the car, of mercy that sent strangers with kindness, of love that never let her fall too far. As the last note faded, silence filled the room like a held breath. Emily opened her eyes to find all 3 judges leaning forward in their chairs. Lily was beaming, her teddy bear forgotten in her lap. Daniel's eyes shone with pride and something deeper, a recognition of the holy in the ordinary. The silver-haired woman cleared her throat, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. She turned to her colleagues, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Then she looked back at Emily and whispered words that seemed to hover in the sacred silence. "We've been waiting for a voice like this." Emily's rendition of Amazing Grace faded into silence. The the last note hanging in the air like a prayer. Tears glistened on the cheeks of the silver-haired judge, while her colleagues sat perfectly still, moved beyond words. Even the usually fidgety Lily remained motionless in her chair, her teddy bear clutched tight against her chest. The head judge, Mrs. Morrison, cleared her throat and dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "Mrs. Carter, would you mind stepping outside for a moment while we discuss?" Emily nodded, her heart pounding. Daniel rose from his chair and guided her and Lily to the hallway, his hand steady on her shoulder. Once outside, Emily sank into a plush waiting room chair, exhausted but hopeful. "You were amazing, Mommy." Lily bounced on her toes, her earlier stillness forgotten. "They were crying happy tears, just like at church." Daniel crouched down beside Lily. "Why don't we get some water from that cooler over there?" He pointed across the waiting room, giving Emily a moment to collect herself. 20 minutes crawled by like 20 hours. Emily watched the second-hand tick on the wall clock, each movement feeling like another weight on her chest. What if they said no? What if this was just another dead end? Finally, the door opened. Mrs. Morrison's assistant beckoned them back inside. The judges had rearranged themselves, now standing in front of their table rather than behind it. Mrs. Morrison stepped forward, her eyes warm but professional. "Mrs. Carter, we've been in this industry for many years. We've heard thousands of voices, many of them technically perfect." She paused, glancing at her colleagues, but what we heard today was something else entirely. Emily's fingers twisted together, her knuckles white. Daniel moved closer, his presence steadying. "Your voice carries something rare: authenticity, pain, hope, and most importantly, faith." "Mrs. Praces." Morrison smiled. "We would like to offer you a recording contract, focusing on inspirational music. Your story, your journey, it's exactly what our label stands for." The words hit Emily like a wave, making her knees weak. She reached for Daniel's arm to steady herself, while Lily squealed with delight. "However," the youngest judge added, stepping forward with a contract folder, "we notice Mr. Hayes has been instrumental in bringing you to us. We typically assign our own production team." "Wait," Emily interrupted, finding her voice. She straightened her shoulders, channeling the strength that had kept her going through all those nights in the car. "I need Daniel to stay on as my producer." The judges exchanged glances. The third judge, a man with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair, spoke up. "Mrs. Carter, while we appreciate Mr. Hayes's reputation and past work, our label has certain standard procedures." "Then I'm sorry," Emily said firmly, though her heart was racing. "Daniel believed in me when nobody else did. He saw something in me when I was just a street corner singer. He's not just my producer, he's family now." She felt Lily's small hand slip into hers, squeezing tight. Daniel stepped forward, his voice quiet but clear. "If I may." The judges nodded. "I walked away from this industry years ago because I lost faith in it. But working with Emily, it reminded me why music matters. It's not about charts or sales. It's about touching hearts, sharing hope." He looked at Emily and Lily, his expression soft. "I'm not here for the contract. I'm here because this family helped me find my purpose again." Mrs. Morrison studied them both for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Then she smiled, warm and genuine. "Well, I believe we can make an exception in this case. Mr. Hayes's track record speaks for itself, and clearly, there's something special in this partnership." Relief flooded Emily's body. Lily bounced up and down, unable to contain her excitement. "Does this mean we get to make real music? Like in the studio?" The judges laughed, the formal atmosphere breaking. "Yes, little one," Mrs. Morrison said. "Your mommy is going to make real music." As the younger judge began explaining the contract details, Daniel stood slightly apart, taking in the scene. His eyes grew misty as he watched Emily and Lily, their faces glowing with joy. For years, he'd wandered, trying to outrun his past disappointments. Now, watching this small family that had somehow become his own, he realized he'd found something he didn't even know he was looking for. Not just work, but purpose. Emily looked up, catching his eye. Her smile said everything words couldn't. "Thank you. We need you. Stay." He nodded slightly, a silent promise. This time, he wasn't walking away. Mrs. Morrison presented the contract, newly amended to include Daniel as producer. "Shall we make it official?" Emily took the pen, her hand steady now. Before signing, she looked at Daniel. "Partners?" Daniel moved to stand beside her, his heart full. "Partners." The morning sun streamed through the windows of Emily and Lily's new apartment, casting warm squares of light across the bare wooden floors. Emily stood in the doorway of the empty living room, keys clutched in her hand, hardly daring to believe this moment was real. The space wasn't large, just 2 bedrooms and a modest living area, but it was clean, safe, and most importantly, it was theirs. "Can I see my room again, Mommy?" Lily bounced on her toes, her backpack stuffed with her few precious belongings, her teddy bear, colored pencils, and a worn notebook filled with drawings. "Of course, sweetie." Emily watched as her daughter raced down the short hallway, her footsteps echoing in the empty space. The sound of a car door closing outside drew her attention to the window. Daniel was pulling boxes from the trunk of his car, mostly items donated by the community after hearing their story. "Need help with those?" Emily called down from the second-floor window. Daniel looked up, shielding his eyes from the sun. "I've got it. You two focus on deciding where everything goes." Inside Lily's room, the little girl was already hard at work. She had spread her colored pencils across the floor and was drawing on a fresh sheet of paper. Emily knelt beside her, watching as familiar shapes took form. 3 stick figures, one tall with long hair, one small with pigtails, and one with slightly messy hair and a gentle smile. "That's our family," Lily explained, adding a son in the corner. "See? There's you, and me, and Mr. Daniel." Emily's heart squeezed. "Honey, remember what we talked about? Daniel is helping us, but—" "I know, Mommy," Lily interrupted, continuing to color. "But he makes you smile like Daddy used to in the pictures. And he listens to my stories, even the long ones about my teddy bear's adventures." Before Emily could respond, Daniel appeared in the doorway, arms full of boxes. "First delivery," he announced, setting them down carefully. "Looks like these are kitchen supplies from the church ladies." "Mr. Daniel!" Lily jumped up, running to him with her drawing. "Look what I made! It's for my wall!" Daniel crouched down to examine the artwork, his expression softening. "This is beautiful, Lily. You've got quite a talent." He glanced at Emily, noting her worried look, but focused back on Lily. "Should we find some tape to hang it up?" Over the next few hours, the empty apartment slowly transformed. Community donations filled the kitchen with essential supplies, plates, cups, a coffee maker, and even a small microwave. The living room gained a comfortable second-hand couch and a small TV stand. Lily's room received a proper bed with pink sheets, a dresser, and a small desk for her artwork. Emily worked steadily, organizing the kitchen while Daniel assembled furniture. Lily flitted between them, decorating her walls with more drawings, scenes of their street corner performances, the recording studio, and increasingly, pictures of the 3 of them together. By late afternoon, exhaustion began to set in. Emily found herself in Lily's room, arranging stuffed animals on the bed, most of them gifts from Daniel's sister, who had kept her children's old toys. She picked up a particularly worn teddy bear, remembering how Lily had clutched it during those nights in the car. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Daniel's voice was gentle behind her. Emily turned, still holding the bear. "Just grateful. Sometimes I worry I'll wake up and find this was all a dream." "It's real," Daniel assured her, stepping into the room. He gestured to Lily's wall of drawings. "Though I seem to appear in quite a few of these masterpieces." Emily followed his gaze, noting how Lily had drawn him into every scene at the diner, in the studio, even standing beside them at their old street corner. "She's attached to you," Emily said softly. "I should probably—" "Don't," Daniel interrupted, his voice kind but firm. "Let her draw her world as she sees it. Kids have a way of seeing truth that we adults sometimes miss." The sun was setting when they finally finished unpacking the essentials. Lily, worn out from the excitement, was already in her pajamas, struggling to keep her eyes open as she added one final drawing to her wall, this one showing all three of them in front of their new apartment building. "Time for bed, sweetheart," Emily said, pulling back the fresh sheets on Lily's new bed. "But I'm not." Lily's protest was interrupted by a huge yawn. "Okay, maybe a little tired." Daniel stood in the doorway, watching as Emily tucked Lily in, straightening the new comforter and arranging her stuffed animals around her. Lily reached for her mother, then called out, "Mr. Daniel, will you tell me a story?" He moved to the bedside, settling into the small chair they'd placed there. "Just a short one," he agreed, launching into a tale about a little bird who was afraid to sing until she found friends who believed in her voice. By the time he finished, Lily was fast asleep, her breathing deep and peaceful. Emily reached to switch off the bedside lamp, her hand brushing against Daniel's as they both moved to close the door. Their fingers lingered for a moment in the darkness, neither pulling away immediately. "Thank you," Emily whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything." They stood there in the dim hallway, their hands still touching lightly on the doorknob, the sleeping child's gentle breathing the only sound in their new home. The recording studio hummed with anticipation as Emily adjusted her headphones, standing before the microphone in the glass-enclosed booth. Outside in the control room, Daniel sat at the mixing board while Lily perched on a tall stool beside him, her legs swinging with excitement. "Ready when you are, Emily." Daniel's warm voice came through her headphones. His fingers moved expertly across the controls, setting levels and making minor adjustments. Emily took a deep breath, her hands clasped together as if in prayer. The instrumental track began to play in her ears, a gentle piano introduction to "Amazing Grace," but with a contemporary arrangement Daniel had helped create. It was the song that had first caught his attention on that cold street corner, now transformed into something both familiar and new. "Remember," Daniel spoke softly into the talkback mic, "just like we practiced. Sing it like you're telling your story." Emily nodded, closed her eyes, and began to sing. Her voice, clear and pure, filled the studio with emotion that seemed to make the very air vibrate. In the control room, Lily's eyes went wide with wonder, and she grabbed Daniel's arm. "Mommy sounds like an angel," she whispered. Daniel smiled, adjusting a dial slightly. "That she does, sweetheart, that she does." As Emily moved through the verses, her confidence grew. The months of hardship, of sleeping in their car, of wondering where their next meal would come from, all of it poured into her performance. When she reached the line, "Was blind, but now I see," her voice cracked slightly with emotion, but it only made the moment more powerful. "Perfect," Daniel murmured, though Emily couldn't hear him. "Keep that take." They moved through the day's session, recording track after track. Some songs were upbeat gospel numbers that had Lily dancing in her chair. Others were gentle ballads that brought tears to the eyes of the sound engineers. Between takes, Daniel would offer gentle guidance. "Let's try that bridge again, but this time, think about Lily." Or, "Remember how you felt that night at the benefit concert." During a short break, Emily stepped out of the booth to sip some water. Her cheeks were flushed with excitement and effort. "How's it going?" she asked, nervously. "Mommy?" Lily ran to hug her. "You're the best singer in the whole wide world." Daniel chuckled, playing back a section of the last recording. "Your daughter's right. Listen to this." Emily's own voice filled the room, crystal clear and full of soul. She could hardly believe it was her singing. The quality was so different from her street corner performances, yet it retained all the raw emotion that had first caught Daniel's attention. That's really me?" she whispered. "That's all you," Daniel confirmed. "Pure talent, just polished a bit by good equipment and proper mixing." One of the sound engineers, a veteran who'd worked with some of the biggest names in the industry, wiped his eyes after a particularly moving performance of "His Eye is on the Sparrow." "I haven't heard anything this genuine in years," he said, shaking his head in wonder. As the day wore on, Emily's voice grew stronger rather than tired. It was as if each song released more of her potential, like a flower slowly opening its petals to the sun. Daniel watched her through the glass, his heart swelling with pride and something deeper he wasn't quite ready to name. For the final track of the day, they chose a song Emily had written herself, a testimony of faith through hardship that she'd composed during those dark nights in the car, watching Lily sleep in the back seat. The studio musicians had helped arrange it, adding gentle guitar and piano that supported but never overshadowed her voice. "This one's special," Daniel said into the talkback mic. "Just sing it like you did that first time you showed it to me." Emily nodded, took a deep breath, and began to sing. The lyrics spoke of hope in darkness, of love that never fails, of faith that carries through the storm. Her voice soared and dipped, painting pictures with melody and words. In the control room, everyone sat completely still, transfixed. Lily crawled into Daniel's lap, laying her head against his chest. He held her gently, his eyes never leaving Emily as she poured her heart into the song. The technical aspects of producing faded away. He wasn't thinking about levels or mix anymore, just feeling the pure emotion of the moment. As Emily sang the final notes, they seemed to hang in the air like morning mist. There was a moment of complete silence in the studio. Then, spontaneously, everyone in the control room began to applaud. Sound engineers, studio musicians, even the cleaning lady who had stopped in the doorway to listen, they all clapped and cheered. Emily stood in the booth, tears streaming down her face. Daniel got up, still holding Lily, and went to the booth door. Emily emerged and fell into his free arm, her body shaking with emotion. "We made it," she sobbed into his shoulder as Lily wrapped her small arms around both of them. The entire studio continued to applaud, witnessing not just the completion of a recording session, but the triumph of faith, love, and perseverance over despair. Through her tears, Emily's smile shone like a sunrise after the longest night. The old church sanctuary buzzed with excited whispers as people filled every wooden pew to capacity. Stained glass windows cast colorful patterns across the gathered crowd, and the evening sun streamed through in golden rays. The small church that had once hosted Emily's benefit concert could no longer contain her growing audience. Tonight's performance had been moved to First Methodist, the largest church in town. Daniel sat in the front row, his heart swelling with pride as he watched the technical crew make final adjustments to the sound system. Beside him, Lily bounced in her seat, wearing her favorite purple dress with a matching ribbon in her hair. She clutched a small bouquet of daisies she had picked herself, intended for her mother after the show. "Is it time yet?" Lily whispered, tugging at Daniel's sleeve. Her eyes sparkled with excitement. "Almost, sweetheart," Daniel replied, checking his watch. The past few months had transformed all their lives. Emily's album, recorded with raw honesty and unwavering faith, had caught the attention of Christian radio stations across the country. Her first single was already climbing the inspirational charts. The lights dimmed, and a reverent hush fell over the crowd. The pastor stepped up to the pulpit, his voice warm with affection. "Tonight, we're blessed to have one of our own sharing her gift with us." Many of you remember when Emily Carter sang on street corners, bringing hope to passers-by. Now, on the eve of her album release, she's here to remind us that God's grace finds us wherever we are. Daniel reached over and squeezed Lily's hand as Emily emerged from the side door. She wore a simple blue dress that seemed to catch all the light in the room. Her eyes found them immediately, and her smile deepened. Gone was the desperate woman from the street corner. In her place stood someone who had rediscovered her worth. Emily took her place at the microphone, guitar strap settled comfortably across her shoulder. The familiar opening chords of Amazing Grace filled the sanctuary, but this wasn't the traditional version. This was Emily's arrangement, infused with all the pain and redemption of her journey. "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound," she sang, her voice clear and strong, "that saved a wretch like me." The words carried weight, telling her story of loss and restoration. Daniel noticed several people in the congregation already dabbing at their eyes. Lily leaned against Daniel's arm, singing along softly. He wrapped an arm around her small shoulders, remembering the nights they'd spent in that cold car, and the prayers that had seemed to go unanswered. Now here they were, watching Emily shine with the light she'd always carried within. The music swelled as Emily moved into her original songs. These were the pieces they'd recorded together, late nights in the studio with Lily curled up asleep on the couch. Each song told a piece of their story. the loss of her husband, the struggle to keep faith, the unexpected friendship that had blossomed into family. Daniel watched Emily's fingers move confidently across the guitar strings, remembering how they'd trembled during her first studio session. Now she commanded the stage with quiet authority, her voice reaching every corner of the vast space. The audience swayed with her music, hands raised in worship. Between songs, Emily shared brief stories about her journey. She spoke of dark nights in the car, of strangers' kindness, of a producer who became family. Her eyes met Daniel's as she talked about second chances and God's mysterious ways. He felt tears prick at his eyes, thinking of how close he'd come to walking away that first night. The concert built to its emotional peak as Emily began her final hymn, "It Is Well With My Soul." The song had special meaning. It was the one she'd been singing when Daniel first heard her on that cold street corner. Her voice soared through the verses, carrying all the joy and pain of their shared journey. Lily snuggled closer to Daniel, her small hand finding his. "See, Mommy?" she whispered, her face glowing with innocent wisdom. "God gave us a daddy after all." Daniel pulled her close, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. He held Lily against his chest as Emily's voice filled the sanctuary with hope, her final note hanging in the air like a prayer answered. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Emily Carter, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.